defeat me, and you won't even come close to Trey's.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to Zaku Talk. I'm your host, Patrick Skeyhill. This week, episode 42 of G vs. Wing, and that means my co-host is the icy
Bob Scary.
Felt like some icy gum there. Well done, Bob. And of course, on the audio boards is Lev Van Rensselaer. As I said, episode 42 of both of these shows, G Gundam and Gundam Wing. But before we get into that, Bob, how's your week been going?
My week has been pretty good. Let's see, what good has happened? I had some great talks with people. I worked with Mindy Pack, who is the creator of the voice straw that I mentioned some episodes back. She went over the proper use and the amount of time to be used. So that helped me to bring down my very neurotic minds with regards to using it. I'm afraid of blowing out my throat, you know? Mm-hmm. And then I found out that I actually have lifetime access to a bunch of stuff from Such a Voice, the group that I went through to get my demos and everything else. So now I know that I have a bunch of assets. And besides that, as I was just telling Skeyhill off air, I've rearranged my office a bit just that way I can have more mental clarity, open up the space. It's not feng shui, but it does create flow. What about you, Skeyhill?
Oh, Bob. The drama set finally behind me, and yet the drama has rippled out into the post-production world.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so it's been a lot of cleaning up that mess and some messes on a few other sets that I was only tangentially involved in. I have a set this weekend that I have a very minor role on, so that will be relaxing. And then a week after that is my TV pilot shoot. I did tech scout for that yesterday, make sure the location was good for the gaffer and the DP. Yeah, Bob, why don't you give us a plot description of episode 42 of G Gundam?
Episode 42 of G Gundam. Assault of the Four Evil Kings. Gundam Heaven's Sword. Or, in Japanese, Kyoshu Shinteno. Gundam Heaven's Sword. It's almost word for word what it says, but I do want to make a note about the choice in how they use the number 4.
Yep.
I've mentioned it, I think, way back. When you have the number 4, it can be read in one of two ways. It can be read as yon, which is the way that most people will read it, because that's just easy number 4. But it can also be read as she, and she is associated with death. So we can look at these 4 evil kings. The implication here is they're the 4 death kings is a possibility.
Well, this week we have Battleship Libra, or in the Japanese, Ribara Hashin, and I'm told Hashin does not mean battleship.
No, Hashin is the word for it. If you were to use it at NASA, not Nashville's NASA, but at NASA, you would say ignition or launch. It can also directly translate to start.
Nicole manages to bring Lady Un to Earth after the barge space fortress is destroyed. Though she is in a coma, Trey's visits her and tells her a hint of what his plans are, even though she cannot hear him. Wufei attempts to fight against the White Fang on his own, but his Gundam gets beaten up pretty badly, so he is not able to continue alone. And Hiro and Sally offer to help, but while he initially refuses, Hiro lends him the Wing Zero for an upcoming battle, and in it, Wufei sees that his future will align with the Gundam pilots to defeat who his true enemies are. Dorothy joins forces with Zex as the final battle is about to occur, and Relina continues towards Libra, now that Zex's new base of operations has been completed. So for 42 of G Gundam, I have not been helped along by all the explanations we've been getting. A lot still seems out of place. What I remembered is Lube, what's his name? Ulube?
Ulube.
So I remember him being the bad guy, and what was sort of irking me for like these last 10 episodes is Like, he's so barely in the show. And I would just like a little more of him. So when this reveal happens, it has sort of a strong... Because if I've been watching this over, like, 2 months, I've just forgotten about him. And another interesting note is that he turns out to be a bad guy. Rain's father looks like he was helping him out, though he may have differing opinions on how he looks back on it. Somehow, Carrot, out of all these people, comes out like smelling like roses. You would point to that guy and be like, that's going to be the jerk. But he doesn't seem involved in any of this.
So you know how we have one of our real life friends who does that whole thing where they play good, not nice?
Yeah.
That's what Carrot is.
He's just annoying government bureaucrat, but not bad guy.
Yep.
I found that amusing.
To your point on Ulube and the fact that he is mostly absent compared to other characters, we have enough information early on, especially if we look back to episode 6.
Yeah.
That might imply there are certain things that are not being said here. And that's only further pushed by the way he's being made to recount the night of his mother's death might not have played out the way that it actually happened, but instead was being used as a brainwash tactic.
You have to kind of write with the medium you're in. And if this were if they put out all the episodes at once, this were binging, I guess it would have to be a little shorter still, but I wouldn't complain about it as much. But if you're going to show this over a year, I need a little more to kind of just keep reminding me that is a plot thread to emerge. Because I had forgotten all about episode 6. Yeah, so I would just like a little more to help tease out that storyline. And this is an advantage of if you had it all take place mostly at the tournament, is Domon would have to spend, I wouldn't have Domon ignore them and not stay at the hotel right away. You could have him kind of be there, and then they're kind of bothering him a lot, and then halfway through he can be like, all right, screw you guys, I'm going to go. And then they could try to do updates and stuff, and Domon could keep kind of pushing them away. And that would make them a stronger presence, and you'd have a better reason to do it, because most of the time they're on Neo Japan, and so you don't really have a good reason to go there.
So I understand where you're coming from with that, but my rebuttal is, do you remember what we used to do on our Saturday morning cartoons or our weeklies?
No, I don't. What are you talking about?
Our afternoons. Yeah, we would have a bunch of repeat episodes where this was apparently a weekly. Whether or not they would treat it like America did their Saturday morning, for them it would be their Sunday morning, or if they were doing it on a staggered basis where they would do 3 to 5 in a week and then have to do reruns in between while they were getting the new episodes out. You would be able to have people who are cutting in the old episodes that would relate to the information that we need for the ending episodes. Does that help us as the people who are getting them 5 episodes in a week and not getting repeats necessarily? Maybe not. But if we're looking at this as a weekly where they can still run reruns like they used to, I think they would have found a way to do it in programming to make sure that we knew what was going to happen. Like they would show episode 6 again, or they would show what was happening in the Guyana Highlands before coming to this reveal.
Well, my thought there is, one, programmers don't care. They just fill slots. But everything I know about how early Gundam has been airing in Japan is it is this once a week release, and they don't really schedule for reruns. That, I think, is the problem that I would have. Now, it might be different if you were doing these home releases, if you were having them on streaming. Even if you were releasing it weekly, you could go back. But I just think if you want this guy to be a big deal, and I have to go back to episode 6 to kind of get that could happen, I think there's some wasted time in there where he could just be doing, because he just left. He's like, he went up to space. And maybe you need him to do that to go set it up, but he probably doesn't need 10 episodes to do whatever he's going to do in space. I mean, if your goal is believability, like that ship sailed in the show a long time ago, so like don't bother with that.
I mean, I guess I'm going to say I'm going to reserve that judgment until we get to episode 49.
Okay.
What do you think of everything that happened during the hospital scenes? I think there's more drama there, obviously, than what's happening in these cutaway portions of the Gundam Heaven sword fight. Yeah,
not quite drama, I would call it. Like a lot of reveals. I still need more reveals to put a lot of these things together. I have no problem with what happened in there. The voice actor does not do a great job in English of transitioning between this darker side of Rain's father and then the more remorseful side. So like all series long, he's been like quiet, sheepish guy, and then now like super villainous guy, and then kind of like whiny guy. It just feels a little schizophrenic.
And see, I think that's where the difference is, because where I'm not watching the original English, and I haven't watched the original English since the last time I watched it years and years ago. The person who is playing Dr. Mikamura does a wonderful job of maintaining a believable rise and fall of his frustrated villainous acts into his please Rain, please, the last person I want to have look at me like this is you. And I don't know how Rain sounds in the English on your side when she gets all this information, but she loses her shit at her father, and she is just emotionally heartbroken because for the sake of Dr. Mikamura to try and best a person that just happened to be a little better than him with this particular setup, he lets Kyoji be on the run, lets his associate be silenced, literally put on ice, and then be made to effectively manipulate Domon so that way she would be his eyes and ears without her knowing. She is livid, and it really comes through. The voice acting here is phenomenal. But again, how does Rain sound in English?
Yeah, not great. Also sort of whiny. No anger feeling at all. She's like, Dad, why? How could you, Dad?
No, I'm not having that.
Yeah, it's more. Then she goes and fixes his android body with some electrical thing or something.
That portion of the scene, how do they depict it?
She like has this thing. I imagine it looks the same as it does on yours, right?
No. So the reason why I ask, on my side, watching this in Japanese and not knowing if your side gets cut differently or not, I watched an episode of Sailor Moon with my wife for her podcast in both Japanese and English. The English one, done with the Deke dub, something that I am reviled by, or that I revile. It cuts it, tightens things up, completely eschews certain points of the script, and tries to force a morality or such, because that was the way America wanted to do their dubs back in the day. In the Japanese, she's literally just taking these, they look like cattle prods effectively. They seem like a mechanist's version of a defibrillator that she is just jamming into his side and letting juice run through him as he's screaming at the top of his lungs in pain as he's basically trying to jumpstart the DG cells that make up his body.
Yeah, so I'm still not being told here or shown that DG cells are affecting him. All that the English dub is letting me know is that like he's an android body now.
I'm hoping that with the next episode or two, we're going to get the answers that I've been wanting you to see. Mm-hmm. So by episode 44, I believe you're going to get the answers as to who or what Schwarzbruder actually is.
Yep.
There's a lot more heartfelt acting in those scenes of this episode. For you and the listeners, I highly recommend that you go and watch this episode 42, in the Japanese. Voice acting, whether or not you understand the language, have your subtitles on, whatever, you understand the emotion that is being put through. And it is being done extremely well compared to what you are saying and what I'm recalling of the English dub.
Yeah, I overall have not been impressed by the English dub for this show. So I would agree.
You've been watching both series in English, correct?
Yeah, I prefer the Gundam Wing dub. It has its own problems that, interestingly enough, get fixed for the movie. I'm not sure why. It's still, some actors are putting in some good work. Even when the actors aren't doing great, it does feel like they are trying. They just might be limited. I don't know how much the English actors have sort of taken this show seriously in G Gundam.
This is proto-anime era.
Yeah.
This is the era where anime is still considered super niche, and it's an easy way for some actors to get a few bucks because they're not necessarily built for it. They're also triple timing, trying to get movie gigs, trying to get TV gigs, oftentimes ending up on soaps.
Yeah. Interestingly, Lantau Island, bigger than Hong Kong.
I'm sorry, what?
In the map that they show at the beginning, they're like, this is Hong Kong. And then we pan over and like, this is Lantau. Bigger, much bigger. And That was interesting to me. Maybe it's not
I
an
didn't
accurate
really
map.
pay attention to the map, so I couldn't say.
And I thought, why don't they just settle more of that, right? Instead of just having it be this lone wilderness island that they have Gundam fights on. Domon is fighting the Raven Gundam, and then Saisashi and Russian guy show up.
You're not going to use Argo's name, even though he's your favorite of these extras?
I just forgot it in that moment. So they're battling the Raven Gundam. They seem to be having a hard time taking him out. And then they go say, Domon, go fight the Devil Gundam. We'll handle this. And my thoughts are, well, you're not handling it now. I don't know if you want to lose him. And two, if the three of you can't handle this guy, why can Domon handle the Devil Gundam by himself? Now, obviously, they seem to have had a plan to sacrifice themselves, I guess, to stop him. And they didn't want Domon caught up in that. But that's what I got.
Yeah, I mean, that's not far off. So the fact that, and I don't know if they showed the fact that all three of them were doing a triple Gaia Crusher when they do that. Yeah, we did
see that. So, like, it was able to open up that hole for Domon to go find the Devil Gundam.
Yeah, they effectively made a shielded tunnel for him to get up to the next layer.
Yeah. In classic shonen form.
Oh, you gotta love it.
Classic, yeah. And then another guy's just there waiting for him.
Yeah, this is classic mid-90s shonen anime. I mean, just be glad we're not several tournament arcs, that the entire series is just the one tournament arc.
Well, it's half a tournament arc and then half like a, I don't know, preliminary meet and greet kind of arc.
There's always this level of, hey, we're doing our tournament thing. I mean,
not always. There's like 10 episodes where they're on an island and then dealing with these Devil Gundam stuff in Master Asia.
Yeah.
Go on. I want it to be all a big tournament. That's what I think would be a great way to do it.
I feel like the way that they handle this isn't awful because very much like you've seen that I can read Wing a mile away with the way they're going to do their twists. I have a tendency to be able to, follow the seed and the breadcrumbs to whatever trope they're trying to do for their story or the beats that they want to have. Obviously, these two are showing themselves as sacrificing. They're not sacrificing themselves. When their crests come in front of them, that's a shorthand to say, yeah, these are big attacks, but they're effectively in plot armor during the course of those.
Yes,
so even though we saw, oh goodness, how did I just lose Saisashi?
See, it's not easy.
No, it's just because my brain was trying to think of the name of the attack, the Shinryu-sei, what have you, his butterfly attack. He is doing that attack that we saw just episodes ago would mean sacrificing his life. But because he is deigned one of the Shuffle Alliance members, one can presume that he is getting the plot armor protection while doing that attack for this. The same can be said for us having our Graviton Hammer, which is the most basic special attack that our good buddy Argo has. He's just there to make sure that the Gundam Heaven Sword does not get up during the big final explosion. He's sacrificing himself to just be a barrier. And I want to make a note about this because, again, the reason why I love this series is because it very much follows the Sentai format. Saisashi, as I've said before, is our green. And I do believe that our Argo Gulski is our black. And this makes sense because, using Sentai color theory for a moment, their archetypes, green is often the jokester, where black is often the stern one. And they tend to be at least brotherly, if not actively brothers or siblings. So to have this big mentor, older man brother type, and then having the kid brother that likes to call everybody big bro, this is a good pairing. And it only solidifies where I think they are in this hierarchy of the Shuffle Alliance compared to next episode when we're going to see, I know you didn't look at the next episode reel. It's not hard to figure out.
It was not
We're going to
hard.
have Chibity and George helping to fight Chapman.
Yeah.
So, and this is going to solidify the blue and yellow of the team where George is the one that has the lackluster, barely visible storyline beat, but is the more earnest in his actions versus the very energy behind every punch and happy-go-lucky effectively by comparison of the other two blue of the team. Yes, I'm going to use this as my soapbox moment. I'm stepping down now.
Okay. Yeah, it's really it on G Gundam for me.
Sure.
Yeah. Not too much here. Not too much bad. I want need more stuff from the later ones, but I assume it's going to come. You say it's going to come, so...
Yeah, I think that especially when reading the episode description just a few moments ago, it was very lax on what was important in the episode and really throws away a lot. Like, yeah, the Domon thing is not necessarily the forefront of the story, but they just kind of throw it away in the description there. There's some things that I feel we could have talked about more there with just how Domon has inspired these two and why they are definitely Shuffle Alliance.
They had a big, long monologue there. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Anyway, yeah, so Gundam Wing fucking told you.
So
fucking knew it.
Yeah, I want to quibble with you. One, it's not a twist that she's alive. It's just a reveal. The twists that you can't see coming are Zex leading the White Fang and whatever Treize's machinations seem to be at the beginning of the show. Catra piloting the Wing Zero and blowing up a colony. Those are twisty things. This is just something they hid. Or Nicole, who tried to get Lady Unkilled, is now rescuing her for the sake of Treize. That reverse on him is sort of an interesting thing. And he's like, we lived in shame because we couldn't stop them, but we had to get her back, so we had to flee and not die honorably in battle.
Yeah, well, I do want to say that, yeah, while Nicole did not really care for her, I have to wonder how much of that is the whole soldier's honor thing. Because the person that shot her, Tubarov, doesn't give a dick.
Does not, no.
So he was blatantly, clearly the type of person that you do not want involved in war because he doesn't understand what you're putting out. Because there was never a body shown, as I said before, oftentimes that is shorthand for they're out of the game for a bit. It's not that they're actually gone. The fact that she was left on life support and is, she's fully healed from bullet wounds, but is comatose at the moment, that makes sense, especially in the 90s when people love to throw people in comas to just put them on the sidelines for a bit.
No, she's been gone for like 20 episodes. No, and I think you're right on Nicole, where the whole reason he was trying to get her out of the way is he had thought she'd become too soft when she was dealing with the colonies, because he too had at that time misinterpreted Treize's kind of vision and goal in what war and fighting are for humanity. And so perhaps, and we don't get to see it on screen, but perhaps something happened in his 18 episode imprisonment where he kind of like figured it out. And he's like, well, then we got to get her back. She's on the right track.
Well, wasn't he the one that was in the Leo or Virgo that was watching Wufei fighting everything?
That was
not him.
That was yet
just
again another random dude who was also inspired and kind of came to his own realization about what Treize is going for.
No, right. I'm sorry. I'm totally spacing on the fact that he absolutely sacrificed himself to do a final hit.
To blow up that ship. Yep. Because he kind of got, he saw Wufei doing the same thing and putting his whole life in battle to fight for these things that he believed in. And then he's like, yes, Treize, I get it now. And then he has to do it. But this is, again, the show taking this time to explore these unnamed characters, these random soldiers that in Star Wars you just sort of kill. But here he gets his own he gets a little mini arc.
No, absolutely. I want to also note, as you alluded to, everything involving the fact that we have both, I'm not going to call him Zex because he's not Zex anymore. No. He's Miliardo Peacecraft. So M-Craft. He and Treize, you can coin that if you like. M-Craft for It always seemed to me that they were going to be having to be on opposite factions at one point or another. I don't know if it comes through on the English side here, but in the Japanese, there is a lot of playful use of language and tone that really does make the war mean more than just what is happening on the field, but also what is happening on the diplomatic side. And I feel like that is something that is often lost in translation when people talk about war, at least in American media. In American media, it's almost always about the damage, the sadness, the people struggling, and ideally either a redemption or a bloody mess that eventually ends in pure sadness, even if it means hooray America. But with this, the diplomacy, I'm thinking of when M-Craft was going to try and shoot down Dorothy, but Dorothy explains to him all of these different things and is using subterfuge and verbal tactics to try and let him know through double talk what it is she's actually there for. It is not what she is saying. It is what she is saying beneath that top layer. And I think that entire scene is something that has made me admire Dorothy at least as much, if not more, than I have in the past.
Yeah, Dorothy, of course, in a solid gold rocket ship.
Yeah, I'm choosing to call it gold-plated. I had to tell that to my wife because she wasn't looking at the screen. And she had the gold-plated vehicle when they were on the bridge, right? That was a popular thing in the 90s. I remember having Hot Wheels that had the same thing going on.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a character note. It's not just like, hey, this looks cool. It's just like, that's just the type of person that she is. And they're letting us know. Yeah, Dorothy in that scene letting Zex know secretly, I know why you're doing this war. I'm one of the few people that can understand you. I'm here to help. And the implication there is, I understand that you and Trey's have this unspoken bond where you guys know what you're doing. And so that's why, even though she is from Romefeller, he's like, okay, well, if you're part of the plan, then come on in. In the manga, she actually comes up with Relina. The character note is that Zex wants to destroy his sister, or he's willing to do it. And Dorothy's able to talk him out of it.
Okay, yeah, I was wondering what that line was, whether that was an antagonizing ploy on her part in the anime or not. Mm-hmm. But it might just be something that they decide to expand on in the manga after the fact.
There's a lot of compression that happens in the manga, like, because Troa's still not with the team. Like, there's this whole segment where a colony is being held hostage by Oz because Barge has been destroyed, and like all the remnants, they need to protect themselves, so they're holding a colony hostage. And it's like Zex wants to destroy the colony, and Kans and Sajichi try to talk him out of it because it's not the great way to start your space revolutionary movement if you could destroy a colony. So like, and that Troa and Hiro are fighting on that colony because it's the circus is on that colony that Troa is a part of. It's a whole thing. And meanwhile, in the battle outside of that colony, that's where Wufei and Duo meet up with Katra and Noin. So like, it gets a lot of crunched up there. And only recently has Dermail and Tubarov been killed in an attack from the White Fang. An interesting note in here that's a little brushed over when people remember the show that the manga isn't able to take advantage of because of that compression is that the Trey's faction remnants joined up with the White Fang and bolstered their numbers because they were mad at Romefeller. But now Trey's is ahead of Romefeller again, and half of the White Fang are these Trey's sympathizers. So, like, that's an interesting tension I wish they had time to explore. Because, like, that's kind of a neat idea that you could play with, that this alliance formed and now it's broken because now they're split between the two. So that I wish they could have talked about that more, but they do note it at least.
Well, then that's always good. I do appreciate the way that Sally Poe does what any reasonable person would in trying to convince somebody to stick around and cool their jets. But I realize that we don't have normal people piloting Gundams. So it is smart the way in which Hiro tells Wufei to use the Zero, not because he is, letting him use the machine. And, oh, by the way, that thing is going to tell you all these things. He's trying to use that as his means of communication because he is so poor at trying to communicate these things to other people. And they're both bad at this level of communication.
Well, I think Hiro just knows Wufei's not going to change his mind just by talking to him. So, but he wants to change Wufei's mind and presumes the Zero system can do that. And it turns out it works out.
Yeah, so I don't know if they say it differently in the English. In the Japanese, it boils down to, well, y'all are going to be doing the thing that I want to do anyway. Sure, I'll do this, but I'm doing this on my terms. It's not like I like you or anything, Baka. He's still being pissy and insisting that his way is the one true way, and I don't need to be knowing any of you, because he's been this lone wolf this whole time.
Yeah, it's less of the pissy. He's the only person, it's sort of similar to Hiro. He's the only person he can trust. And so that's why he wants to fight alone, but also he doesn't want, it's why his Shaolin master kind of destroyed himself so he wouldn't have these ties to weigh him down and to affect his integrity. So he might be reticent to kind of repeat that again, especially since they all had to sacrifice themselves for him to learn that.
Yeah, I'm not here for it. I get the gist. I'm not saying it's wrong. This is the reason why I don't really gravitate towards Wufei of the 5 here. To me, his story seems, on first viewing, because I know he's currently your eye catcher, it seems the weakest to me. It seems like, okay, we're going to have the broody stuff happen to him, and he's going to be our dark horse of the 5. And that it doesn't resonate with me in this period of my life.
Yeah, resonate, I think, is a better word than weakest, because duo is the weakest because nothing really happens. I think you're just having a tough time understanding his mindset because you're Mr. Teamwork. Yeah, but listen, Wufei doesn't want to be put in a situation where Zex or Treize are like, if you move any further, we have these Gundam pilots hostage, we're going to kill them all. And then he has to be like, fine, I give up. He wants to be able to eradicate the evil in space, regardless of what it costs. And he doesn't want to be held back by those sentiments. I
get what the archetype they're going for is, and I do understand the methodology here. Whether or not I agree with it is the matter that I'm holding, because if I were to be in this world, if I were to be a part of this war in some fashion, even if I'm a civilian, right, of hearing about these 5, the one that is going to be the scariest to me is the one that doesn't care if I live or die. I understand that they're having Wufei stand by his integrity, air quotes, and try to pursue what he believes. But having seen similar characters in other media, it's often, while it allows them to be ruthless, and ruthless is not a bad thing, it is a problem for being able to truly grow. You stagnate. You have nobody to connect with, and therefore you can't learn new perspectives and learn new techniques. You stagnate, and eventually you're going to fall apart in the way that you were trying to avoid in the first place.
Well, I think that's the difference between your shonen or a Power Rangers type or a Sentai type of show than this one, where those guys have already had their arc. He doesn't need to change anymore. Like, that part's over. There's a reason why Troa gets amnesia for the second half, because in the first half he's already figured out what the other people haven't yet. So and they're not learning techniques here. Like, that's not a. They're all joining. Techniques,
I'm not talking about literal physical fighting moves. I'm talking about ways with which to cope with life, ways with which to manage a situation. I'm not talking about, oh, hey, let's do this pincer attack against these individuals, Kamehameha blast magic.
Yeah,
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the way in which people interact with each other is going to inform how well you can perform in a given situation, whether that be from a diplomatic, tactical side, or if it's a physical, punchy, kicky, energy blasty thing, whatever. The term technique applies. It's the same reason why, if we did not have Relina talking to as many people as she has to inform her and develop her into what is effectively this world's perfect monarch at this time, we would not have anything that would allow for this piece to have come into play. She needs to have interacted with all these bodies in all these different situations in order to better understand herself and how to go about things. Whereas with most, if not all, of these Gundam pilots, none of them have really had the opportunity to really connect with, at the least, each other, at the most, more people. You have at least 2 to 3 loner types out of this team of 5. And I'm going to use team here because that's how they're depicted.
I mean, not really, no.
In visuals, we are seeing everybody clump these kids together, these 5 individuals. And when you look at marketing stuff, if you look at art books, if you look at toys, they're always set together as
but if you get swayed by that, you're not appreciating the show on its own terms. You're just following the capitalist way of selling it to you that has to cheapen it.
Sure, but that capitalist means of trying to inform you through the marketing, through the media, is how we're getting this story. It's not.
Well, it's how you're being told to come to the story. And if you want to not change as you're watching it and be open to what it's telling you and get it to fit into the neat box, then you're limiting what you can get out of the show.
I'm trying to find the words here. I do understand that these 5 are not Power Rangers. I understand that they are not a specific team with the letter A in front of it, right? I get that. I think what my confusion of this idea of plotting to get these kids into suits that are made of the same thing and doing the same mission, but staying completely separate, the wires are not connecting.
Yeah, I think that's just sort of because of your background in the show. And it's why you wouldn't be the audience for this show outside of me making you do it for a podcast.
Yeah, making me. I've been meaning to get this under my belt this whole time. You're just setting up a structure, and I need structure in order to get my shit together.
Yeah. And so what you have with these 5 Gundam pilots is they all decided to fight Oz for the various reasons, and the circumstances of the world having changed so much have forced them to have to change the way why they fight. Hiro is doing it because it's all he knows, and it's the only thing he thinks he's good for. And Catra's doing it to atone, and Trowa was doing it because he wanted to return kindness to the world because he was tired of people being like him. And Duo's doing it to keep the colonies out of any more fighting because they've already been through enough. And Wufei's doing it because it's for the greater good and like that in his mind. And so that's why they wouldn't necessarily just be teamwork. But they have found little things that bond them. Catra and Trowa have their music. Trowa and Hiro have this like life lesson of like let your life be ruled by your emotions. You know, so we get little moments like that, but as they kind of team up for various sections. But ultimately, I don't know, Catra naturally wants to do teamwork, and we'll see more of that later on now that they are together. But everybody, even Duo comes off as convivial, but like he wants to fight so nobody else has to, you know, and he just doesn't stop the other Gundam pilots for doing it too.
I think it's because I think of, again, war media, the stuff that I've been exposed to anyway. Often has this band of brothers mentality. This idea that if you're in the trenches together, you're going to develop a bond and you're going to want to try and keep each other's back from getting filled with bullets or what have you. Whether it's ancient medieval, you know, knights going on the road from one castle to another, if it's World War I and all's clear on the Western Front, whatever it is, it's always an idea of people having to learn to become friends, if not nearly family, while having to deal with the horrors of the world around them. And I think the thing that doesn't click with me is that we are given enough instances where that should take place, and yet there's a resistance on the better part of these 5 individuals to allow for that human connection. And as I say it, I also think about how, for the most part, and I'm even including Relina here, most of these people are distant. The physical space that they keep from ever being close to each other is prevalent in the art direction, that they don't allow themselves to be anything but singular entities. And it's a very lonely place. Yeah,
and I think that's what the show wants, right? A show that's famously taken advantage of your trope expectations. I'm not surprised I didn't fall into this band of brothers trope. And aren't you tired of those, Bob? Aren't you happy that it's like, oh, thank God I'm not another one of those that we've had since the 40s?
I agree with the sentiment, but again, I think it's just the way in which stories are told. There's like, 7 different stories. I'm stepping away from monomyth for a second. There are like 7 different general story arcs with, you know, minor variations thereunto. It's fair to assume that if you're going to throw somebody into a war story, and if you have had the prior Gundams do something where it is a little more band of brothery, I assume. I haven't watched Churne, I haven't watched original 0079, blah, blah, blah. It's fair to assume that this alternate take on original Gundam, because Wing was intended to sort of be that way, not in the same way as Seed, but am I wrong?
Yeah, it's not as direct, but G Gundam gave them a different audience than what they'd want, but they lost their core fan base. So they wanted to be like, hey guys, no, we're back. It's okay.
If you have a bunch of people who have been living with this story for 10, 15 years at this point, it's fair to assume that a war story using giant robots is still going to be a war story regardless of the giant robots. So if I were to take away the giant robots from Wing for a second, right, you can replace it with, super AI guns or whatever you need to incorporate some of this mental confuckery. You still have this distance of people that are effectively lone gunmen running into the middle of war scenes, all these skirmishes, all these different situations. Aside from having this robot that provides a little extra survivability, they're just lone warriors wandering the planet and wandering this ocean called space.
Yeah, and I don't know, that element was sort of always in there. Like, early Gundam does have these band of brother tropes in them, but also like the inability for humans to connect. And this is the root of war. And that's why there's this new type thing being explored in those early Gundams, because like that was supposed to be the way humans could do it, and yet we only use that as a tool for propaganda or for war. And we exploited it. And the show Gundam Wing has done enough already to tell us that it's not going to give us exactly what we're expecting. Not every episode has a Gundam fight in it. Not every episode has the main characters in it. Sometimes we follow these side characters. Nameless soldiers get a little bit of screen time and get their own little stories. The main antagonist we had set up at the beginning of the show ends up being maybe reasonable. The man that was like the friendly rival that was joining with them a little bit becomes the main antagonist. Relina is like crybaby girl, then becomes queen of the world. Like, we're doing so many things to surprise us already. I don't know if this late in the game we should be clinging on to tired old genre tropes.
Then that's fair. I'm trying to explore this from my being one of the handful of people in anime who has not seen Wing.
Yeah, and I'm not surprised you're having a tough time connecting with Wufei outside of what I think your normal predilections are anyway. Because I had a tough time with Wufei the first couple times watching it. I just wasn't getting it. And that's why he probably has been the last person to be my favorite Gundam pilot. Because the other ones, you can eventually digest easier. And he just is sort of the trickiest one because it just hasn't been seen that much. He's like Trey's in that way, where most shows just don't explore these types of characters or these types of point of views or the way that they reveal them.
I do want to just make one more point before we wrap up this portion of our discussion. Mm-hmm. I do want you to know that compared to the Bob that you used to live down the road from some 5 years ago, I'm not looking at this story in the same way that I would watch my this, that, the other. That's what G Gundam is for. G Gundam is territory that I understand. It is story style that I am very familiar with and have enough armchair information to be able to inform people who might not have taken in that type of media. When I'm watching Gundam Wing I am treating like I would any other film or story that you and I have sat through that is not animated, not Japanese, is telling a story. This is just one really long movie that we're watching in sections as far as I'm concerned. Mm-hmm. And when you and I have discussed movies in the past, sometimes it is very clear what it is that I'm looking for because I have certain flavors that I go back to. But I'm more open to the salad bar now than I was in the steakhouse that was my film knowledge.
What an interesting metaphor that was.
Yeah, I could have gone ice cream shop, but I feel like I did that one an episode or two ago. So I decided to go to a steakhouse now and let you know that I'm willing to have the healthy stuff and be able to enjoy it.
Yeah, I just think that's, and I know that, and you have done a great job of that here. I just think sort of the way, you see the world and the way you want it to be and the way your morality compass is sort of set and how sort of strongly you hold to that. I think it would make sense why what Wufei's path is sort of confusing you and you're struggling with it. So I'm not too surprised.
You don't have to take this part for recording, but I do have like just a 1 minute thing, right? In one of my Kamen Rider shows, there is a character who is almost exactly like Wufei in the way that he manages himself in the world. He is so devout to the conceit of justice that when, as a child, he had seen his father was a part of some major business crash due to him embezzling funds with a bunch of other high-end people or whatever, he basically caused his father to commit suicide if he didn't actively do it himself as a 10-year-old because he believed that his family and everybody else he knows can go to hell as far as he's concerned. Justice is his. The thing that bothers me with those types of characters, it's the same reason why people might look at Batman or Superman as being junk, is that if you only have a one-track mind towards a thing and you eschew all other emotion to get to your final goal, in some ways, yeah, it is a noble cause. You are relieving yourself of earthly connections in order to attain some higher paragon status. On the other hand, to eschew all that emotional connection and all of that earthly connection can also leave you being just as much a villain to others as you are trying to remove from this world because you say this is not right. And you're not open to it taking in of bending rules or this or that in order to allow for a truer good to take place. There is a rigidity there that is a double-edged sword. And that's all that I have a problem with Wufei, is that his rigidity and his unwillingness to bend in some ways is great, but in other ways could be the downfall. I prefer characters that are able to be more lenient and can bend with things as necessary, so long as the final outcome is one that does the most good for the most people. Does it mean that they're going to have to do something dark or do something out against the law? Yeah. Do they eventually do the thing that was right all along and had to do some unsavory things to get there? I'm open to it. But I'm also not a fucking Punisher apologist because I hate those people.
And that's fine. That's why I thought you'd have a hard time vibing with him. But you don't feel like you can relate to these people that are willing to do what it takes to fight against the people you don't agree with?
I think the problem I have is that because I am not one of those fighting types, in Pokemon terms, I like to think of myself as firefighting.
I don't know what that means.
Insert laughter here. I do understand that I live in a world of philosophy, diplomacy, trying to reduce the possibility of people being harmed. So in that regard, to see someone who is capable of doing that, it is difficult for me, Bob Skerry, to resolve with that methodology. I watched a video or two recently on Animorphs that was a great retrospective. There's a point here.
Okay.
The character of Cassie was always really shit. She's a hypocrite. But in war, as this YouTuber had mentioned, you need a hypocrite, someone who is willing to question whether or not the thing you're about to do is sound. If you don't have a hypocrite among the people that you are working with, you are unable to resolve whatever might need to be done. Yeah, you might have to pull the lever, push the button, whatever, and cause a big problematic thing to happen in order to get to the final good. If no one is there to look at why it's wrong, you are more inclined to do it. Mobile dolls. If you don't have somebody like Trey's who is resistant to the mobile dolls, you do not have a way to stop the mobile dolls from being the easy way to keep spamming the button until you win and you've decimated the population of the planet or what have you. In our grouping, yourself, myself, some people we know, I have to be the hypocrite at times where I have to call out my justice in order for us to just see it for a moment before running through with whatever that is, whether that's going into abandoned buildings or having a bunch of people hanging out in the same car while one of us is carrying a knife in our back pocket while we pass the white hen. Yeah,
I think that's probably why we resonate with Wufei differently, is because I am greatly annoyed by hypocrites. And I have moments where I am a hypocrite, and then I try to avoid them, but they happen, and I get greatly annoyed with myself. But Wufei, to me, feels like something you might get behind, in these polarizing times where, people are cutting family members out of their lives and stop talking to friends because they're having these disagreements on important issues, and people are shaming other people socially for not believing certain things that they think are socially right and are socially forward. And what we're forgetting is that those things are like you say, those people become villains to other people, and those people then find their own rallying cry, and those things lead to Trump. So I don't know, Bob, with the things that you care about and the things that you fight for and the way that you fight for them, do you find any resonance with Wufei in that matter?
When you frame it in that way, I can understand where you're coming from. I think the problem is that there's no way to not have a Wufei on either side of a line like that, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
No matter what, people believe they're right, and they are going to have people that are willing to put themselves on the line and say, forget you and everything that you stand for.
Yeah.
I am right. Here is why. You're going to hell now. That's what it is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So no matter what, I prefer someone like you've called out on several occasions here. I prefer someone like Duo, because Duo is, for better or worse, a martyr, a sacrificial lamb, to try and do the most good while alive and try to keep people from being harmed. I resonate with that because he's willing to take those hits. He's willing to speak up as necessary while trying not to get completely pulled out of the game. It makes sense to me to try your best and resolve things with words before having to resort to just, I am the final arbiter, I am the judge, the jury, the executioner. It's those people that I can fear and that I have trouble relating to, because if you are going to dictate, and as a point of note for people at home, I used to believe that a benevolent dictatorship would not be an awful thing. See Relina here for an example. I don't see that now because I recognize that without having the right checks and balances in place, there is no way to ensure that the people as a whole are going to be in agreement in some level of what is the word I want to have here? Some level of peace.
Great. So I'm glad we've unearthed that. But now I would say Wufei's actually not that different from the other pilots, other than maybe Catra. Like, they're all fighting with the gusto that they are because they believe what they're doing is right, and they don't think what the White Fang is doing is right or what the Earth is doing is right. For a while, Hero didn't think what Relina was doing was right and was going to kill her for it. But what they are pretty good at doing, again, outside of Catra, is sort of like letting everybody kind of do it. Like, so, Hero thinks he needs Wufei to help out, but Wufei doesn't want to do it, and he's like, fine. All right, if you don't want to do it, fine. And Wufei doesn't think what Noin's doing is right, but when they meet in space, he doesn't try to destroy her. He just leaves her to do her own thing. So there is a lot of like, and Duo is sort of speaking for the colonies. The colonies have sided with White Fang, but he says, no, I don't want you in a war, so I'm going to do this thing for the sake of you, even though it's not what you want right now. So they all kind of have to do what they think is right in regards of what other people want, because that's part of how people fight at all. But
coming around and just finishing this off, because I feel like we need to go the way we go in a moment.
we have gone off the rails a bit.
Well, I mean, philosophy, it's a thing that you and I both like, and perspective and all that jazz. You know that I am not a person who admires the ideal that allows war to exist. Yeah. Because I would lean into Relina's camp as far as the way to manage things. So no matter what, I don't think I'm going to wholly agree with any of the five pilots or Treys or Zax, at least at this moment. Yeah, and I would also like I think a lot of wars are done stupidly. I think they're done for the wrong reasons, and I would like to avoid them too. But I don't know if I fully agree with any of these people in a war sense, but what I can do that I enjoy doing is just like, it's out there. People do fight, and it's interesting to know why and what drives them and what motivates them. And that's what I like about this show. I don't have to agree with them. I like getting to figure out what motivates them and why they do these things and how they react. That's fascinating to me. Do we want to go the way we go?
Yeah, let's go the way we go.
Like sand Through the hourglass, this is the way that we go.
I think we should probably skip Way We Go this week.
I agree with you.
I think we've Wade We Go'd already in the previous section.
I think we went the way we go in a loop a few times.
We did that.
I'm a little tuckered out. Maybe we should just go to the nerd corner.
We do need to take a seat there.
Let's take a walk to the nerd corner, where we will talk about a lot of nerd stuff. Yeah.
So one of the things that's interesting about the costume design here for the White Fang is in the liner notes in the manga and in some sort of the related show materials, it describes those costumes that Zex and Dorothy have, among a few others, as being inspired by the volunteer soldiers in both the American Revolution and the American Civil War, in the way it's designed and where everything is. And that was interesting to me, of these colonies rebelling, that they sort of harkened back to that. But then that made me think of what I recently acquired, and I don't know why I'm picking this as a nerd corner, because it's basically impossible to find, but this Trigun modifier of the Bessem D20 system I have recently gotten and started to look through. I think it's really cool and fun. And if you, I wish more people remembered Trigun in this day and age, but it's certainly worth a watch. But if you like Bessem and you like D20, this is, and you could probably convert it to D4 if you wanted, this would be a fun thing to kind of take a look at and play, because the whole world's sort of built there, and it's a very interesting world that's ripe for exploration.
I will say, to your point, it is difficult to find physical copies, but, you know, the internet is a trove of information, and if one knows where to look on the net, they might know where to find such information down the line.
Yes, the show does not endorse anything Bob may have been alluding to, but you can't prove he was, so there you go.
What are you talking about? I had to take a second. I was looking at my phone. Leave me alone.
Bob, what is your nerd corner this week?
My nerd corner this week is I recently found my Yu-Gi-Oh cards while I was doing some cleaning of my closet. Mm-hmm. I was really happy to find my old decks, and I found my old hero cards. I'm going to go downstairs in a minute to grab the rest of the collection that I have. I may or may not have been looking at stuff on Amazon. Really, this is just a warm, gentle reminder. If you play Magic, you probably played Yu-Gi-Oh. Let your Magic cards sit a second. They've gotten rifled through enough. Go blow the dust off your old deck boxes. Look at your 40 card decks in smaller sleeves and just reminisce. You don't have to bring them back out. You don't need to go out and make Amazon lists of cards that you might want to do to rebuild them or anything like that. Just appreciate the cards that you have if you still have them. And if you don't, just take a moment and remember the warm memories of when you used to play against your friend who had a zombie deck and would regularly trounce you while conspiring to try and dress up as Yu-Gi-Oh villains of our own making in order to try and fight people at the local card shop.
That's a deep cut there, Bob. Deep cut.
Deep cut.
Well, all right. I'd like to thank Lev and Rensselaer on the audio boards, keeping us sound and slippery smooth. I'd like to thank my co-host this week, as he will be each and every week this season, Bob Skerry.
Hey, hi, Worldwide Sentai. This is Bob Skerry. VOA coming at you live from Zaku Talk HQ. You can find me on Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, and a slew of other places by my handle, Bob Skerry VOA. You can also find me at bobskerryvoa.com to listen to my demos, because I'm, in fact, a voiceover artist.
And I am your host, Patrick Scale. You can find my features, documentaries, short films, video essays, animations, behind-the-scenes footage, and so much more at quixoticunited.com and social media, presumably with a similar sounding name. Thank you all for listening. Bob, tell the audience why buffalo don't make good roommates.
Buffalo don't make good roommates because if you get a buffalo from Buffalo, they're afraid that you're going to turn them into wings. But unfortunately, that's a misconception. Buffalo, New York is where the wings were made. And it's just chicken with a buttery Frank's hot sauce coating that you fry in the oven, and then you do a second fry with the sauce on.